Hey, everybody. Welcome to another session. Hopefully, you've had a great day too. I know we started a little bit late on this one, but I promise you, Andy and I will make the most of your time. Today, we're going to talk about scaling cloud co-sell, specifically how using MEDDICC, a common language for go-to-market teams, plus Tackle can really help you as an ISV with the cloud provider. So without further ado, I'll introduce my guest here, Andy Whyte, CEO of MEDDICC.com. Andy, thanks for joining me.
Hey, great to see you as always, Patrick. Hey, everyone. I think this is year 2 for me, right? This is like a got like a rebooking here.
Yeah, you're our local celebrity here, and we were going to invite Pim to join us, but it's his birthday. So Pim, if you're out there, happy birthday! I'm going to do my best to stand in for you. All right, so let's get down to it, Andy. We know that co-selling can be difficult, especially if you're a new ISV to marketplace. Maybe you don't have a great compelling story. You're trying to figure out what are all these required fields I need to do, who are these contacts I need to make. It's a lot. With what you all have been doing with MEDDICC, you've been working with AWS, you've been working with Microsoft and Google. You've spent a lot of time over the last year really embedding yourselves into those sales teams and a lot of ISVs that work with them. What, in your view, is the primary reason why co-selling with the cloud is so different? And why is it harder than just direct sales?
Yeah, good question. I love this analogy of sales being a bit like a computer game, like that, we are all trying to, compete to get that win at the end, which is quite similar to like game theory as well. And if you think about one of the reasons why I like this analogy is you think about computer games, like if you think about the difficulty settings, particularly with modern games, the harder the difficulty setting, the more rewards you get, the more like experience points, I think they call them in modern gaming. And I think in the world of like cloud marketplaces, modern go-to-market, it's a bit like that. Like if you're playing sales in easy mode, you would just procure directly, right? But you won't get as much points, which is bigger deal sizes, cutting down on the time to close. But with that, of course, comes some complexity. So it's like anything in sales. I think anything in sales that is really moves the needle, really like takes person from doing that, 100K deals, that 150K deal, that $1 million deal to that $1.5 million deal. There's no secrets, there's no shortcuts. You have to put that extra work in. And I think particularly, as organizations begin to get that motion, that cloud marketplace motion off the ground, there's some learning there. So it's a new thing to get your head around. So there are some challenges and extra difficulties that come with it. So that's why I'd say it's a little bit harder.
Yeah, and you and I and your team have talked over the last 6 to 8 months. For those of you that don't know, Tackle's using MEDDICC.com. We've implemented their processes across our go-to-market teams. And one of the reasons we did that was for us, being one of the cloud teams, if you will, we have to prioritize how we're selling to the cloud providers as well, because we're doing co-sell just as our ISVs are doing. And one of the challenges that we have, that a lot of you on the line are listening, we have to learn how to speak a language across each of the clouds. So it's not just, hey, we've got our own internal speak that we need to use with our CX teams and our support and our product teams. But we now have to translate that into what AWS wants and what Microsoft wants and what Google wants. And if you've done this before, there's different requirements. There's different ways these teams work. There's different ways they're compensated. And all of that has to mesh together to be successful. So one of the main common challenges that ISVs face today is that lack of a commonality across like what's required and how do I understand this. You've got additional difficulties with like not having a true champion or a misalignment because you're not speaking that same language. But Andy, I wanted to like just banter with you a little bit here on why do you see that being such a difficulty with the cloud providers, and how does implementing MEDDICC make that easier?
Yeah, well, it's like again another analogy. You're probably get a theme here. I like analogies, but we love the way of framing MEDDICC as a common language, and it's a common language for go-to-market teams. And effectively, any type of customer engagement that we're talking about as vendors, as cloud vendors, as ISVs, as GSIs, and all the people in the mix, effectively what we're trying to do when we're engaging with our customers is focus on three areas. The first is value, right? What value are we bringing to the table, whether we're the ISV, whether we're the cloud provider, whether we're the GSI, whatever it is that we're bringing to the table. And effectively what that is, what is the pain that exists without us, without our solution? What is the gain that comes when they work with us, so with our solution? When you look at the pain to the gain, you measure the delta between the two. What is that measure? And that's the metrics, right? That's the value. If we want to be professional salespeople, professional go-to-market people, we want to make sure that we're always doing this in a differentiated manner. So we're not building pipeline for our competition. Basically, we're differentiating our offering, which is in our world decision criteria, because the best organizations, best go-to-market organizations know that their customers don't have good decision criteria. They shouldn't. It's not their job. They've got better things to do. So our job as great professionals is to inspire and influence that towards what we think is the best way of doing things, which is of course our strengths. So that's the value piece, right? And if we just pause there for a second, every organization, if they're not using MEDDICC as a common language, they're using different words for that. They're not saying pain, they're saying problems. And that's before we even go across different go-to-market teams, where problem becomes pain statement or problem statement or jobs to be done or use cases. Everyone basically has different ways of saying stuff. So what we're doing is saying, hey, there's a common language here. Let's use it throughout what we're doing. So that first pillar, like I said, is value. The second pillar is stakeholders. Basically, who is it that needs to understand what value we can bring to the table? And who is it that needs to be involved in the process, which is the third pillar, which is not just how do we get the process of they're going to buy us or not. It's all the hundreds, if not thousands, of micro decisions that happen along the way, and making sure that we're aligning not our selling journey, we're aligning to their buying journey, so that we're always seen as the partner that is the most efficient, the one that is, the most diligent in helping the customer in this case make the right decision. So do you think about that from a perspective of putting aside like MEDDICC itself and compared to other ways of doing it? If you look at, so AWS did a survey probably about 2 years ago now, and we've been working very closely with them. So I'd imagine this number's gone up considerably since then. But 2 years ago, 76% of tier 1 and tier 2 ISVs that work with AWS said that they use MEDDICC or a variation of MEDDICC, whether it be MEDDICC or MEDDICC. And so there's a common language. And so, building on that, leaning into that, building all of the great go-to-market activities that everyone does on top of that common language is only going to make co-selling easier. And then, when like you said earlier, the complexities of bringing like cloud marketplaces to the mix, well, if you've got a common language to refer to all of the things within that, it makes everything much easier.
I like that you hit on the buying journey, and that if we are good professionals, we're aligning to the buyer's journey. And I think that's a very important point to call out, especially when you're doing co-sell. Because when I'm doing co-sell, essentially I could check a box and just share an opportunity to the cloud provider and just see what happens. But if I'm truly being a professional and I'm trying to make that opportunity work, I need to understand not only the buying journey for my customer. So obviously I'm going to the cloud marketplace because I have either through discovery or through something like Tackle Prospect uncovered that the customer wants to buy through marketplace. So I'm going here for that reason. But I also need to understand AWS or Microsoft or Google are kind of my buyers too, right? They're my partner in this. I need to understand what's important to them. They're not necessarily buying what I'm selling, but they're buying into me as a way to help them hit their quota. And so I need to make sure I'm selling to them in a manner in which speaks that language to them as well. So, what is my customer's pain point? How are we going to solve that? And then long term, how am I going to be a good partner for you? So I like that you called that out.
Yeah, I love how you said that. And I think one of the things that we talk about a lot is that there's actually, I think it's coming much, much more documented, the art of co-selling. And, how you sort of articulated that is beautiful in terms of, what value is it that we bring to the table, so that if we're selling with a partner, we're aligned and they understand what value we bring to their customer, which may be the, where they hold the relationship. But there's another part which you touched on there as well, which is what we would call selling to the partner, because, our partners are businesses as well, whether it's the cloud provider, whether it's a GSI or anything in the channel. They have their own interests. They have their own pain that they're trying to solve. They have their own, metrics they're trying to hit. They have their own, what could be decision criteria, right? Of what they're looking for from in this case, a vendor, right? An ISV. And so MEDDICC makes that very clear, right? Because we've got the language for selling with, and we've got the language for selling to, but it still focuses on, in what value do we bring to the customer, or what value do we bring to the partner, which stakeholders we have to be engaged with the customer, or which stakeholders we have to involve with the partner. What do either processes look like as well? And so, yeah, that's a big thing. And something else you touched on there a little bit, which is a real opportunity, I think, for people listening here, particularly if you are selling, or if you're in the go-to-market and your teams are selling, is that if we go back to the decision criteria, I think whether the end customer knows about cloud marketplaces or not, there's such a huge, huge, huge opportunity for ISVs to basically thought lead, to differentiate themselves by making cloud marketplace procurement part of the customer's economic decision criteria. So whether they proactively are thinking about that, or whether they, as often is the case, they don't even know that's an option, right? There'll be someone in the business that knows, but maybe not the people we're selling to. We introduce them to the benefits that we all know and love about procuring on cloud marketplaces. And in the worst case scenario, the other people we're competing against, the other ISVs we're competing against, can sell on cloud marketplaces as well. But then in worst case scenario, we're seen as the thought leader. We're seen as the ones that brought that up. Our competitor is just being like, oh yeah, we can do that as well. So they're not being seen as such a great partner, but it could be the best case scenarios. Of course, they haven't even thought about it. As often is the case, they don't even know what those things are, as many AEs aren't informed, aren't enabled. And so all of a sudden, we've got something that's not only going to be a benefit to the customer, it's a benefit to us because all the reasons we know about faster transaction times, all that good stuff. But it helps us be seen as unique, as really thinking ahead, but also thinking ahead on the side of the customer. So I think that's such an opportunity. And what, like I said there, because there'll be somebody in that business that does know about cloud marketplaces, perhaps they're not the person we're engaged with. If we can find who that person is, that's a potential new champion for us who can be helping us sell internally, helping us get insights that we need to improve our job that we can do with selling. So that's one of the reasons why I get really excited about cloud marketplace. It's such a unique differentiator.
Yeah, it is. And we're seeing that firsthand too. Our market has shifted from the alliances teams were buying Tackle or any other third-party integrators to help them get up on the marketplace. And now we're seeing those folks shift to be our champions. And even in some cases, they're not even able to be a champion because they don't have economic influence or budget. And that's shifted now to the RevOps stack. So you talk about the ability to also leverage additional contacts and make relationships. The cloud marketplace opens that up for us now. And so now we're having conversations with CROs and we're talking to the C-suite about this go-to-market activity that's no longer just in one silo. So I think that opens the door for us for co-sell. Same for other ISVs. I'll tell a story of one here in a minute, but I think what you've got at, and what if I could summarize in one sentence what we've talked about so far, is that you need to have structure. You need to have a structured approach to co-sell. And that involves having that common language. And that involves having, obviously, the materials of alignment on why we're the best partner and why we're solving this problem for the customer and how we're doing those things. But what have you seen with ISVs who have tried to co-sell or have come to you all for help enabling their go-to-market teams when they don't have structure? Is there any common mistakes or common avoidances that you think ISVs should kind of heed warning around launching co-sell?
Yeah, absolutely, and it's very topical for the audience. We're the stage we're on, I should say, with RevOps is that, and this is a friend of ours. I'm borrowing his statement, which I think really paints the picture I'm going to paint here, which is our good friend Phil Sohn from AWS. Who has this saying, you don't want to meet the customer at the checkout, right? The idea being that, for whatever reason, we go through the process and we're just at the last stages and we're just trying to, figure out how we're going to get this done, whether it's going to be traditional or, in this, as is the case, via a cloud marketplace. That's a bad position to be in, because there's all of the advantages that they exist around the efficiency are kind of been missed by this point, because you're probably already considering doing your own contracts and that type of thing as well. So my advice here of why you get this right is, and it goes back to the point I was making just a second ago, it's not that cloud marketplaces become a procurement option. It's that they become a unique differentiator for you positioning yourself as a forward-thinking economic partner that are going to be doing, not just going to make the process more efficient, but actually, if we think about the draws on the spend and all that good stuff, it's going to be actually a better option for the customer. And so the answer to the question is, don't meet the customer at the checkout. Make this part of your discovery process. The earliest opportunity, start to talk about this, because if you're having conversations about cloud marketplaces, you can tie it into your broader discovery around the cloud infrastructure, the footprint, the lay of the land, the things that they've got, projects they've got on the table, other priorities. Make it part of that. And you look like a strategic partner. You look like someone that has the ear of the CTO, or the things that the CTO is interested in, front of mind, whether you're selling to that office or not. You could be selling to marketing, but all of a sudden they think like, okay, I feel confident about putting this person, or at least their project, in front of our CTO or CIO or whoever it may be, because they seem to have those things covered. They seem to have a good story. They seem to have their interests at heart as well. So yeah, being proactive, which is the same as all good selling, by the way. Like, we talk a lot about not all MEDDICC is equal, because MEDDICC is a kind of open source acronym, basically, right? That's used very broadly. We do it quite differently, I think, to other organizations. And if you had to summarize the main, in a word, how we're different, or how our MEDDICC is different, it's the one word. And I think this is one word, because it's kind of I always get autocorrected when I put a hyphen in. Proactive, right? Proactive. That's the difference. It's not. We don't see it as a reactive checklist. We're not. Our customers, sales reps, aren't having a meeting and then going into their forecast call and getting asked questions relating to, okay, well, who's the champion, who's this, where are we at with that? The way that we work with our customers on MEDDICC is proactive. So before we've even had a meeting, we're trying to figure out who the champion is. Before we've even had a meeting, we're trying to figure out what pain is this customer likely to have. So we go into those conversations proactively, on the front foot, talking about things. You're looking well prepared, having things front of mind. And it carries, to your point earlier, it carries into co-selling as well. If we're having those first meetings with a partner, we can brief them very succinctly on the things relating to value, stakeholders, and process, like I said earlier.
I love that. I love incorporating Phil's quote too, and being proactive. And that kind of brings me to a story that I want to talk about on a customer who wasn't proactive initially. And I'll kind of very briefly cover this, and we can chat about it. But there was an AI-powered analytics enterprise. Let's call them DataPass AI, made up name. Okay, migrating to AWS, strong product, clear ICP, but their deals were stalling out. They were on marketplace. They were trying to co-sell, but it was just to check the box. Discovery was more of, hey, do you work with AWS? Yes or no? And then at procurement, they were like, oh, how do you want to buy? So not proactive at that time. Champions, they really didn't have any true champions at the customer or AWS. It was kind of just this, they were relying on AI to be the momentum carrier for the deal. Key decision makers weren't out, and the deal died. So Tackle and MEDDICC get involved. Now this customer says, okay, I've got another big deal on the horizon. But I need to figure out, like, how should we do this the right way? They use Tackle Prospect to uncover that the customer has a high likelihood to procure on AWS. That allowed them to then go into discovery with confidence. So starting the conversation with the customer on really doing deep discovery questions around their cloud, how they procure, and going into obviously pains, et cetera. Once they've got that information, they then register that opportunity through Tackle for Salesforce. That went straight into ACE. They understood the customer's decision process. They got the economic buyer from this because AWS saw the deal. They could track it, as you mentioned, being proactive. They used the Better Together story templates, sent that over to AWS. AWS got the clear message on what they were trying to do, what value they were bringing, and brought them in front of the right person. That triggered, obviously, the engagement from the field team. They now have a champion they were able to build. They were already aligned on that decision process. As you mentioned, a differentiator, like that was a huge competitive differentiator against the competitor in that particular deal. The customer drew down on EDP, and voila, end of the day, $1.2 million multi-year deal from Salesforce using a private offer. So I think those type of stories and hearing those type of use cases really are something that folks listening on this call should try to start to put together on their own. How do we look at our opportunities end to end, not just with sales, but also when we now get to CX and we get to the rest of our go-to-market stack? How do we implement that common language, and how do we use the tools of Tackle and MEDDICC to do that? So thanks for letting me rant there for a minute, but I hope that story helped kind of put into light how you can do this in practice.
Yeah. We use the, in when we're trying to sort of talk about examples of where these things make the difference, we use the kind of classic sliding doors example a lot of, like, here's parallel universe 1 where they don't use Tackle and they don't use MEDDICC. Here's parallel universe number 2, same customer, same opportunity, they're doing these things. And the thing I always talk about is this really, for me, defines the difference between winning and losing, right? I think in particularly in sales, we think about winning being closed won and losing being closed lost, right? That's how our industry thinks about it. But the reality is, if we're qualifying correctly, we should never lose an opportunity. And I don't mean that to sound like some sort of wonderful LinkedIn sales guru nonsense, right? Well, no, I never lose a deal. I mean it from a perspective of, if we're truly qualifying correctly, then it shouldn't be a surprise to us. And we should therefore be like, okay, we shouldn't be in this opportunity because it's not a priority, or we're not engaged with the right people. There's not enough value, whatever the reasons are, we can, like it says behind me, qualify out. And so, in those situations, that's why losing isn't closed lost. And therefore, if you redefine it from the perspective of how you gave that story there, the difference is, winning is, did we win basically the best opportunity we could? And that doesn't necessarily mean the biggest, because sometimes it's better to win a smaller deal and land and expand, or be more efficient and land a deal faster than it is to make it last twice as long for only a little bit upside of revenue. But that's like how I really, really find the best of the best in our industry define winning. It's like, did we win the opportunity for the best amount we could, the best deal we could have done? And these things these are very hard questions to answer if you don't have a common language, if you don't have a team being able to say, well, actually, yeah, we did have those things, or actually, here's the opportunity we improved because we didn't have the right engagement with the right stakeholders and that type of thing. And then the other thing that I liked about your story, and this is something we see as well, and I'll bring this back to, from a cloud marketplace perspective, to the point I was making earlier, where you're kind of seen as the thought leader. But when organizations, as we all know, our customers are risk averse. If they can find a comfortable reason to stay with the status quo, they will, right? So our job, as much as being people that create value, we also have to kind of implicate the pain. We have to sort of create the urgency that's there for them to move. And if we don't do that, that's where inertia lives. And inertia is, for me, in my sales career, the reason why I lost the most opportunities, right? And so what we want to make sure we're being seen as is a great partner for the organizations that we're trying to sell to. And what is often forgotten about, when we talk about decision criteria, our industry typically talks about technical decision criteria, which we're selling technical solutions. So it's obviously important, imperative. No one's going to buy a solution that doesn't work for them technically just because they like the company, right? So it's obviously important, but I think we overlook the economic decision criteria being like the business case, the not just the cheapest, but the one that has the highest return for us. But then there's another part, which is relationship decision criteria, which is where I think that things like marketplace and the approach of co-selling with partners and Tackle and all these good things they're less tangible, but they really are very, very powerful in underpinning that customer's confidence to partner with you. So whether it's that, they feel like you're aligned with their cloud provider, you feel like you're aligned with their channel partners, the GSIs they work with, the other organizations they work with, like tech, all those good stuff. That's really where there's a real, win there for salespeople, for go-to-market teams to really align and be seen as like a true partner, not just because they have the best solution, which you can prove as well, but because they underneath see those things. And I had a great example of this recently with, something that's quite topical, which is classic tariffs thing that's going on. And a company works in supply chain. They had a situation where their customers were gravitating towards them, accelerating their partnerships with them, because this organization has such a rich reputation as a partner, as the organization that can advise their customers on things like tariffs, as it were, but generally supply chain things. So something that, going back to our parallel universe example, something that for their competitors, where they don't have that richness, that relationship decision criteria, that they're seen as a partner, they go, oh, tariffs. This is big. We don't want to buy anything right now because we're uncertain. The difference is because they got the relationship decision criteria, they're going, oh, okay, this is big. We need a partner and we need you more than ever. So yeah, your technical side of things is important, but actually the things that I think our industry doesn't index on enough is those relationship decision criteria things. So if we can, find those, and the reason why I bring that up is because I feel like aligning with your partners, aligning with the channel, the other institutions that our customers work with, whether it be the cloud providers, whether it be the GSIs, the other channel people, if we can show that we're in the same, we're not just partnered with them, we talk the same language, we're in step with them, then it's really going to build that real confidence that we can be great partners for them.
Yeah, I love that. Especially when you put it in the cloud provider lens, it's no different than the folks advising on the tariffs, right? I mean, they want a partner in the ISVs, and they want the ISVs to be partnered with companies who can help scale that. And when you talked about qualifying out, like that's what these cloud providers are leaning into MEDDICC for. Yes, it creates a common language, it creates a common framework, and it makes things simpler when it comes to communicating about deals. But it also enables those conversations to be, those deals to be more qualified, more aligned. You've got partners engaged. So, they don't want a million co-sell opportunities and only 5 of them close. They want to see those opportunities that have already been, hey, we did our due diligence and we qualified out, but now we've got these 10 deals that are much more aligned and enterprise ready, and I've got a partner involved. So I love how you highlighted that. All right, Andy, we're running up on our time, so I'm gonna just I'll ask you kind of for a key takeaway for audience members listening. Mostly our ISVs, RevOps. What's the single biggest unlock for those ISVs to help them either master MEDDICC in their go-to-market strategy or implement it if they haven't done it yet? And what's your hot tip for folks that are listening on how do we do this better?
Yeah, I'll take the theme, the RevOps stage, and the key. I think the key message that sits in front of all of the points I made, which is proactive. Yes, like MEDDICC is like, of course, it's tried, tested. It's got the best heritage of any methodology framework, whatever you want to call it in our industry. It works brilliantly as a qualification framework. It works great as a checklist if you want to just use it for that, but you're leaving huge amount of value on the table, just like gigantic amounts of value on the table, especially if you start to dilute the effectiveness of it by putting in other languages on top, different methodologies, different tools, different ways of saying the same thing. So the key takeaway, I'd say, especially given the RevOps audience, is proactivity. Do not see it as a post-event checklist. See it as a proactive common language that you use across the entire go-to-market team. So we've got our customers using it from product ideation, where they're thinking about pain, they're thinking about the metrics that will measure that pain and how they can inspire decision criteria through to marketing, through the SDR channel, all the go-to-market teams, and then post-sales. So customer success teams are using it as the language in which they still engage with customers. They still talk about value and the process of all the renewals and upsells that come with that. So think about it that way, as a common language you proactively use in all your activity, and particularly for the cloud marketplace side of things. Phil Soane's quote, don't meet the customer at the checkout, make it part of the discovery, make it part of the value that you bring, not necessarily just from a technical perspective, but where you can be seen as that proactive, economic and relationship decision criteria partner.
Love it. Be proactive. Don't leave it at checkout.
Yeah.
Andy, thank you so much for your time. If folks want to connect with you, you can find Andy Whyte on LinkedIn. He puts out a ton of great content with the team over at MEDDICC.com. If you want to learn more about them, go to MEDDICC.com. You can also find their videos linked on Andy's page as well. And if you want to know more about how Tackle and MEDDICC work together in sales enablement for Marketplace, send us a note. Next up, it's time for Dark Trace with Bug Crowd and Grammarly. We're going to do some lightning rounds on cloud go-to-market journeys. Thanks so much and enjoy the rest of the day.
Thanks, everyone. See you.
Thanks, Andy.